All right, now let's talk about pricing. Pricing is an interesting element. There is, of course, the classical economics where it's all about demand and supply and what is my margin or what's my cost. But let's move away from that. Let's look at what value am I delivering to the patient, right? And I keep saying that, but it's very important. So let's dive in what the value principles are. First, price elasticity of demand. You've heard of price elasticity. I think, if you've done your GCSEs and A-levels in business, what this says basically is different products have different price elasticity. And what is price elasticity? Well, if I increase my fee by 10%, how much less demand will I get, right? And in the airline industry, it's highly elastic, right? People say, oh, I'm not paying 10% more. I'm going to go to a competitor who's priced more fairly or more affordable. In healthcare, price elasticity is either very low or it's what we may call inelastic. The value is less than 1. What does that mean, less than 1? Well, if I increase the fee for a crown by 17% and the volume of patients I'm getting is reduced by 10%, then the elasticity is minus 0.6. And that's less than minus 1, which means it's inelastic. There's a lot of research in healthcare elasticity, and nearly all research shows that healthcare elasticity, depending on the type of healthcare that we're providing, the healthcare services, tends to be inelastic. And we're not talking necessarily in this case about the elective and the cosmetic side of things, because there is quite considerable elasticity there. But if we look at general dentistry, acute medicine, we tend to see very inelastic services. This is another way of looking at it. So for example, if we look at acute or life-saving care, that's very inelastic, right? What's the meaning of money if I lose my life? So I need to pay whatever. Well, in dentistry is to keep my sanity, because all the toothache is so heavy that I really want to get rid of the pain. Then of course, that's also urgent care, and they're all quite inelastic. Then we go into an area that's still inelastic by the traditional means. It's still less than minus 1. And that's where we go into checkups and fillings and maintenance. And I say fillings with one caveat, which I'll highlight in a bit. But let's look at the elastic bits. And the elastic bits in dentistry are the aligners, the veneers, the whitening, the facial aesthetics, anything that is elective. That a patient wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I really want to do this. I want to remove the gap between my two teeth. I want to have whiter teeth. I want to have longer teeth, wider teeth. They're crooked. I want to align them. All that, or I have a gummy smile. I need to change the way I appear when I smile. So all of that is more elastic. Now, a question to you. Is a filling elastic? And the answer is, it depends. If the filling is done because the patient just broke a tooth and they don't need endo, right? But it's very sensitive, they can't even eat, then it's more urgent. And that filling will be falling under the inelastic category. If the filling is part of your routine work, then that's also inelastic, but it's a bit more elastic than the urgent one. And if the filling is just, I have this old filling that is staining, and I was thinking maybe, I need to replace it, that's more elastic. Okay, so it's about understanding the necessity of services. And why is it that healthcare has less elasticity? Well, healthcare, usually there's an asymmetry in power. We have patients who lack knowledge. They don't really understand much of what we're doing. And as a result, it's very difficult to judge whether the price of this service is fair. And unfortunately, that leaves room for unethical practices. And I want to highlight again, ethical dentistry is a must, right? You cannot abuse the knowledge asymmetry and the power asymmetry that exists between me and the patient in favor of just increasing the fees just because this patient doesn't understand what we're doing. But the reality of healthcare price elasticity is that there is less transparency. And part of that less transparency is, of course, I have insurance companies, so that adds a lot of opaqueness. And we have, in some settings, there is this idea of I have a dentist and the dentist is like, right? And people like to have their dentist. And that gives some power of monopoly to that dentist. So healthcare tends to have quite low price elasticity. In that, we must understand lies an opportunity. As long as it's done ethically, it's a great opportunity, I think. How do we organize dental pricing? Well, for elective services, we need to start positioning ourselves as a luxury provider, right? We can bundle certain services, right? And I will talk about bundling. But the main thing here is we need to start looking at those services as a premium service, as a luxury service. And once we start changing the way we perceive that service, we will price it differently. We will organize that luxury service in a different way. Then the necessary and urgent aspects of dentistry, keep it simple, right? Patient comes in for a broken tooth, right? I can fix the tooth for you. I can fix it with option A. I can fix it with option B, right? Option A gives you 1, 2, 3. Option B gives you 1, 2, 3. What would you like to do? Simplicity, right? And the patient needs to be given those options. But the more you can act in a timely way and resolve the issue, and you do it with high levels of competency and skill and transparency. This is the fee structure. It's not complicated. The higher the conversion rate will be.